All right, we're recording.
Okay. All right. My name is Matt. We're back. We are here having a discussion with my friend Ryan, who I met on YouTube in 2022 from his consciousness videos, including Alan Watts. And we're not going to beat around the bush. We're here to party. And we want to talk about the shape of the earth and metaphysical topics and paranormal topics and truther stuff. Right, Ryan?
Yes, yes, truther is probably the best way to describe us, I would say, because we're not really interested in one party or one belief. We're here to figure out endlessly what's happening. And sometimes you gotta get a little dirty to find the answers and the truth. So,
Well, we do kind of stick to one belief, though, like our family traditional, like religious views, Christianity type stuff, or for me, Catholicism.
of course, of course. No, we're loyal to our culture and, how we were
We're
raised.
we're
But
Jesus, we're Jesus freaks.
exactly. But what I mean by we're not afraid to get our hands dirty is we're not afraid to toss up some information that people are afraid of. Like, for example, we can start off with just a
Oh
known
God, I'm scared.
fact.
I'm scared. I'm crapping my pants. I don't want anyone to hear this.
No, man, the people need to hear it. Look, if NASA is allowed to again, you want to remind me what their budget is again, their daily
It
budget.
it used to be a few years ago, and I would look it up, and it would say $52 million a day. Now, when you look it up, it's like not as much. It'll say like maybe 10 million or something. But it's in the billions per year, yeah.
Yeah, and so okay, 22 million per day according to uncensored AI, which we all know uncensored AI does not lie.
So
And
people used to this used to be a talking point with the truth would be you would say $52 million a day. And I remember looking it up and that was right. So it's kind of, I don't like they caught on to us talking about it and like, ooh, cut it in half so it doesn't sound as bad.
right, right. No, we can definitely assume that that's a low number for sure. But just to give folks out there who have no idea, right? Because imagine Matt, you're talking to somebody who's they've been through the system. They think that the Earth is a little bit of a globe per se. They've seen physical globes and well, quote unquote pictures from Earth or outer space. I mean, but the biggest thing I think we should go into with why none of this even makes sense at all is because on the Apollo 11 moon landing, photos show no stars in the sky, despite being in space. And not only that, but the American flag planted on the moon appears to wave, suggesting air resistance, which, seems a little bit odd. I don't know if there's wind in space that, maybe,
Yeah,
maybe,
and the
uh,
other side of these people are really good at arguing that and they always say, "Oh, well, he was shaking the pole and they had the flag stiffened or something like that, and he was shaking it so that it was wiggling." But of course, I don't believe that. I think it was probably
right.
probably a movie on Earth, so there was air.
Well, even the footprints in the soil are well defined, contradicting the expected behavior of dust in a vacuum. So if in a vacuumed, condition state, if you step on a pile of dust, it's not going to make a perfect shape like with the gravity that we have would hold everything together. Allegedly, right? This is just what we're being told. But I mean, that's kind of interesting. Didn't really know too much about that. Um, the inconsistencies have led people to question. And so it's like, it's not even that. It's that it goes back to the Bible. It says in the Bible that the earth is a realm. It's not a globe. So
There's a lot of really good Bible verses that really seem to go against the heliocentric model. For example, the four corners of the earth. It's just a very weird terminology to use if we were on a spherical object. And also, I think it was Jesus who in the Bible is able to see the entire earth all at once. So that would be, of course, impossible on the outside of a sphere. You could only see about half of it at a time.
and
So yeah, I mean, the most important biblical thing for this topic is just the first few pages of the Bible because it talks about how God created the earth and he created the firmament, um, and he created the sun and the moon as lights in the sky for signs.
right, right.
Sorry if I don't have the exact verses down, but yeah, it's very clear, very, very clear that it was designed and created and done so in a very skillful or I'm not sure, just definitive way.
100%, man. And not only that, but um, so the ancient Greek philosopher Pythagoras is often credited with the first or being the first to propose the earth as a sphere. And I guess his observations were basing off of ships disappearing over the horizon. So I don't really know how that necessarily proves anything, but also didn't he do the Pythagorean theorem?
Yeah,
And so what I wonder if there's some kind of connection to the triangles and
there is because you can use the Pythagorean theorem to estimate the curvature of how much a sphere is curving um, when you're looking at distances between 2 points on the Earth. You can actually use the Pythagorean theorem as a right angle triangle, a right triangle, and the center of you can turn the sphere into a circle, like the cross section of the sphere is a circle, and then you can make a triangle so that there's a right triangle and then there's a curve outside of the triangle, and then you can use that to calculate the curve height in some way. I was just reading about it, so yeah, it is involved, definitely.
okay, okay. And I wonder what like deeper symbolism that represents. Like I'm sure it's all tied together to something, but you know,
Yeah, well, just going back to what you said about the ships disappearing as proof, we were always told this, and you kind of just assume it's true. But if you actually go out and do the experiment and you look at boats on the water, they really they kind of disappear. Well, the thing that the sphere sphere people will say is that you can see the mast of the ship if it's like a sailboat. You can see the mast uh, after the hull disappears beneath the water because it's being blocked by the curvature obscuring it, right? And
dude,
this just only happens in very, very rare cases. And really, it can be done in several ways because if you'd have a camera and you hold it closer to the water and there's like some waves between the camera and you can get it to look like that pretty easily. Or let's say there is things like refraction. So depending on the conditions of that day, like the air temperature, um, differences in air temperature, like the lower part of the air closer to the surface can be hotter, and if it's hotter here or colder there, you'll have an effect. I forget which is which, like with refraction, but yeah, a lot of people say refraction actually makes the Earth look flat, but it's actually the other way around, where refraction is what sometimes can cause a ship to look like it's vanishing a little bit, even though it's not. It's just a effective perspective. And it's all yeah, sorry to sound like a know-it-all, but just has to do with your eyes and your vision and your perspective, because most of the time the ship, it doesn't go underneath anything. It just gradually fades out of view. So the atmosphere is thick, a lot, especially in the ocean. It can be very thick, and after a certain amount of miles, if it's hazy, it just it's like fog. So when you're driving on the road and there's fog, you can't really see the cars in front of you, even though you would normally be able to. But the atmosphere naturally is a little bit foggy. Even on a clear day, there's a slight foggy nature to the air. So it
Okay.
eventually, after miles and miles, it'll just become more and more blurry, and it will just vanish because it's getting
I,
so much smaller.
right. And I think what you should tell people too is like, okay, look, if bottom line, someone asks you what shape is the earth, right? It's like
Yeah.
this is really the truth right here. The earth is flat, confirmed by observations of the horizon always appearing at eye level. The lack of visible curvature over large bodies of water and biblical references to a firmament, contradicting the round earth narrative pushed by governments and media. So it's like, yes, if, you know, because as Christians, which what is Christ, right? It's truth. So to be a Christian is to be a truther. If as a Christian, your mission is to stick to the original information, well, that's the Bible. And so the powerful thing about uncensored AI, or really any AI model that's not um, pushed pushing a propaganda, is that you can basically scan everything, all the old text, everything, all the old information, and you can kind of make sense of it a little easier because there's a lot of it. But even, I mean, there has been land seen outside of Antarctica, so it's like, what where do we go from there? Like
Well,
people
I think you
have
got to
seen it.
simplify it down a little bit. Sorry to interrupt you.
Oh,
Keep
you're
going.
good. No, that's pretty much all I wanted to say there. You go ahead from here, man.
I'm just in the business of simplifying this whole thing, and you just go from what do you know? So you go out to the beach, right? You go out to the ocean, the beach, even if just a big field, and the earth isn't curving. It's just by default, it would appear to be level. So yeah, I mean, we don't know the entire shape of the entire earth. We don't know how far it goes underneath us. We don't know how far it goes up above us. Like if you're saying, well, you got to stick to the Bible as much as possible. Yeah, I mean, part of me does tend to stick to the Bible and believe in the firmament and things like that. But, I don't limit myself like that, because you just never know. Like, could space be infinite still, even
Yeah,
if what we
but
were told isn't true?
right. But how do you know at what point something isn't propaganda? Like, I guess you never know what's actually
Your
real.
firsthand experiences and your observations you can do yourself, like going to the beach and looking out and things like that
Yeah,
with
but
a telescope.
what I guess, yeah, I guess that could be enough for somebody. I guess for some people though, it's like, if they're not satisfied with that, how do they, you know, without being able to go into space or something like that, how do they really find out a solid? Because I don't know, like maybe someone lives in the middle of the US and they don't live near an ocean and they're not going to go out there anytime soon. Like, I'm just trying to think of how someone could.
Yeah, that definitely has a lot to do with it because if I didn't have so much experience on the water boating, like I used to live in Florida
Uh-huh.
and I'd be in South Florida when you're on the coastline. A lot of times there's like all these mangrove islands and you can be out on the intercoastal and there's like 10 miles between you and this mangrove island and you're sitting on the boat and you have a camera and you zoom in, you can just like see the whole island and everything. And eventually when you're making these sort of observations, you just start questioning, where exactly is this mythical curvature of the water? Because the math, so they mainstream science and university scientists and professors, they would have you think that the Earth is a sphere with a circumference of about 25,000 miles. So, given those figures, it's pretty easy to calculate um, how much curvature there would be in a given amount of distance over the water. And it's 6 miles. Like, if you say you're 6 feet tall, about, and you're standing at the beach, at the water with your toes in the water, the horizon should be 6 miles away. And after 6 miles away, you should be basically unable to see certain portions of things past that. Like it'll start to dip down. So you're looking over, and the Earth is basically rising up into a hump and then going back down. And 6 miles is where that's like starting to happen. So the horizon is 6 miles away. Like if you're out the water and it's flat and there's no big waves, you can't see any water past 6 miles, according to the math. And that's without things like standard refraction, which is, in my opinion, um, really kind of overblown because I've been reading about it, and yeah, I mean that's just too nitty gritty for this discussion right now. But um, yeah, basically just simplifying it down and cutting away the propaganda is like just the long distances you can see because you can see ships like 20 miles away. And I remember um, going deep sea fishing. I used to go deep sea fishing in Florida, and you'd go like 20 miles out, or sometimes like 50 miles out on a big trip. And I think if I remember correctly, I've been like about 50 miles out to sea or further.
Okay.
And there's buildings, so there's like some condos and some apartment buildings on the beach. And as you leave the marina, those buildings get smaller and smaller, and the land gets smaller and skinnier, and the trees kind of start to go invisible, right? And the beach you definitely can't see anymore because it's like the beach just turns into this like skinny, tiny little sliver when you're out in open ocean, right? Until it's just gone. And the buildings, especially, you can see like instead of like slowly shrinking down, or slowly, lowering down, they just kind of get smaller and smaller and smaller. You can see them,
Right.
way longer out to sea than you think you should.
That's a really good point, man. Okay.
Yep. And also, I used to live in the Chicago area and you can see the skyline of Chicago about 50 miles over Lake Michigan. And a lot of times you can see most of it. Sometimes, depending on the weather, like it'll get cut off a little bit. But when you do the math, it should be totally not there in a lot of
Well,
cases.
right. So it's like,
Depends on where you are
right.
and how high up you are. Like if you climb up, 30 feet on the sand dunes, then the math will say, oh yeah, you can see it. That doesn't prove anything. But when you're standing on the shore with your toes in the water and you can still see so much, well, that math doesn't add up at all.
Okay. Yeah, man. I mean, that makes sense. Damn.
So that's my favorite thing because I just like seeing what I can see for myself. It's not like, oh, I read
Right.
this in an old book. when you have to take
Right.
that on authority.
No.
But that's, like talking about religion and Christianity and believing in, you know, spiritual experiences. It's like, in my opinion, what you can go out and look at in nature, it's like that's the most real, like close to spiritual, whatever truth you want to say.
Right. Yeah, man, that's it's got me thinking about a lot right now. Well, let's try to tie this back in. So, I mean, obviously, yeah, you got to have your personal experiences, right? But then that's kind of where you can't stop with just that. You should also look for information because, again, it's not about finding the truth, like it's hidden away somewhere. What it really is about is just being informed so that when someone says something like, hey, this happened, and it's like, wait, did that actually happen, or did they just, if you don't actually know, so it's kind of like a side quest to know information. Like, you don't need it, but if you have a lot of information, you can just win arguments easier, I guess. It's not, it's more of just something to do once you've already believed. Like you said, you've had to figure out the earth was flat on your own, and now I feel like it's time where you're diving into, the math and the why. So I don't know. It's my thought.
Yeah, I mean, I just think as soon as I was exposed to that idea that, just even the term, or we have 10 minutes left in our meeting, it says.
Okay.
So yeah, we can kind of wrap it up here. It's getting pretty late, but yeah, like everything can work on if the Earth was a plane, and even just saying like, "Oh, Earth is flat." It sounds like toxic to me in a way because of all the hard discussions I've had to have with people where they react in a negative way to that idea or that term. And there's been a lot of propaganda on the internet of like not very credible people being associated with the term flat Earth. And there's like all kinds of documentaries making fun of it and videos making fun of that idea. But if you look at the Vikings and their cosmology, right? There's pictures of it. You can look it up, and it's just like a line, and then you have like the world tree up above it, and of course it's flat, and there's like other worlds underneath it, but they're all like parallel to each other, like flattish worlds, right? And
Right, right.
kind of lost my train of thought, but basically it just struck me because I was into astronomy, and I'm like looking through my telescope at all the planets at Jupiter. I'm looking at the moons of Jupiter and Saturn, even like the sun with a filter so you can see the sunspots and things like that. So I was always very into this stuff. And at that time, this is like when I was in high school, up until, my senior year of high school, I kind of lost interest in it. But up until I was a sophomore and junior in high school, I was like looking at these things, right? And I always just assumed that what we were told was true about the spherical Earth and how the Earth rotates around the sun. So I never considered that it could be any other way. That worked. That made sense. I never really went out and checked on that or anything. But then as soon when I was 20 and I heard the term flat Earth kind of in a new way, and I saw like some pictures and some little like diagrams and stuff, I was like mind blown because I just realized, okay, well, there's no reason why all that stuff can't work on that model, on that platform. Do you know what I mean? I was like, yeah, there's got to be some math to be reworked and stuff, but like, there's no reason that stars can't revolve around a flat plane and just do what they're doing despite the ground being level. And it's flat. Like, I don't like using the word flat, but when you go up in the airplane on a clear day, like I've flown on a plane many, many times in my life, and when you go up in the plane on a really clear day and you can see like farmland from like cruising altitude almost like 30,000 feet, 20,000 feet. You can see all the stuff and like buildings and little hills and shit. And it's very smooth. Like it's really smooth. And when you think about how far the Earth is, like the how much it stretches across, well, it's about 10, 20,000 miles, right? We just went over that. It's the circumference is 25,000. So we're talking in the tens of thousands of miles. And Mount Everest is only about 5 miles tall. The tallest mountain on Earth is 30,000 feet, Mount Everest, 29,000 feet, which is roughly 5 miles. So compare 5 miles here to 10,000 here and tell me if that's not flat. That's really smooth in comparison. So yeah, there's bumpy parts to it. Um, there's craters and there's valleys and hills, but we're very small. So when you go up super high in the airplane and you look at especially things like the coast of Florida, like I remember looking at the coast of Florida and in the afternoon, the sun shining on the water. And it's really weird. Like you get like this huge reflection of the sun. You can see it like hitting a huge part of the water, like mirroring,
Interesting.
and it's just very smooth. Like it's like you can't really see any rough parts to it. Like it's literally in the literal sense of being flat, like like a desk or something like that. So I just don't think people realize how accurate that term is. I mean, in my opinion, it's just it is what it is, and it's in my opinion, very unfortunate that we live in a time where you can't just. I mean, maybe I'm projecting and nobody cares as much as they do, but you just get uncomfortable talking about the subject, flat Earth. It's a subject of ridicule, even though it's one of the most accurate descriptions of, you know, the Earth.
Damn. Well, well said, man. Very well said.
Thanks.
So,
Yeah, you had some really good points too about Plato and Pythagoras and stuff. It
thanks,
just
man.
goes to show, and Plato came up with that without doing really many experiments. Like the best experiments they had back then, before we even went into space or anything, they just assumed the Earth was a sphere because of like this guy Eratosthenes' experiment, and he like put a stick in the ground in one area and put a stick in the ground in the other area, and he's like, "Look, the shadows are different lengths," and it just makes no sense. It's an absolutely ridiculous thing, in my opinion. And it's just totally possible on a flat surface.
Yeah, man. Yeah, I agree. There's so many inconsistencies, and I think what we'll do is maybe in the next one, if we can somehow, I'll just show my screen, and that way we can kind of show people the information, and you can talk about it and react to it and go say why it's true, and then they can
Yeah, sure.
see some stuff along with our words.
Yeah, man, that sounds great.
Okay, cool. Well, I think this went pretty well. We got it. Turn my
Yeah, we
can.
spoke our mind, dude. We spoke the truth. It felt great.
Yeah, it did.
And it's not political. It's not religious. I mean, it's a little religious with what we talked about, but honestly, just removing even religion from it, I would still feel the same. Like, I'm not convinced. You can just flip it around and say it's like we're trying to talk about flat Earth and convince people that that's the case. But honestly, to me, it's more like disproving the global model. Like, it doesn't make sense. The math doesn't add up. Their proofs don't add up. If you look up like proofs the Earth is a sphere, it'll be like ships over the horizon, pictures from space, um, Eratosthenes sticks in the ground experiment, like Coriolis effect, like hurricanes are spinning in the different ways in different parts of the earth. It's just like there's no beef to their arguments. Whereas we have like very common sense, clear, like using your own eyeballs type arguments.
Right, right.
And I have the
Yeah.
pictures. Like I didn't even read this stuff in books 100%. Like on my computer, I have the photos I can show you of the city of Chicago, 50 or about 30 to 40 miles away from the water. And it's just not convincingly curving. And it should be like, you know, always you should be able to see the tips of the tower skyscrapers. And I know
Right.
these figures, like the Willis Tower is 1,400 feet tall and change. And the amount of curvature that you'd get, like standing on the shore in Michigan, would be like 1,000 feet or like 900 feet. So you should only be able to see like the tips of the buildings. But a lot of times you see just the whole city. It's really faded and shrunken, but it's the whole thing. So it's like, of course, at that distance, it's so far away that like, you know, you can't expect to see like a person walking around on the street from that distance. So like the lower height things, you're not going to see them. You're only going to see the upper parts of stuff. That's not doesn't have anything to do with curvature. That's just distance. Like you can't see forever. You
Right,
just
right,
can't.
right.
Things get smaller.
That's a great point as well.
And the crazy thing and what really can kind of convince you after a while is like hearing people that believe the sphere. They'll be like,